How's it going, OFPs? And welcome to another episode of the Off-Field Players Podcast. I'm your host, Phillip Hall, and I hope everybody's having an awesome week, or by the time you're listening to this, having an awesome or had an awesome weekend. Things have been a little bit different, as you can tell by my background. I'm actually back home in the Bay Area. So my time with NASCAR as an intern with the NASCAR Diversity Internship Program has come to an end a few days ago, and definitely very grateful to come back and be a part of the NASCAR Diversity Internship Program for the second year in a row, and being able to work with the weekly series in Daytona Beach, Florida, at the headquarters in the very town where NASCAR was established. As the NDIP class for this year was a part of a very special year for NASCAR, as it was the 75th anniversary season for the sport. So definitely very blessed and very grateful to be able to be a part of the program once again and do it in the 75th anniversary season, as I was able to learn a lot, able to, embrace all the opportunities that came in. And yeah, just being around the sport that I love the most. So definitely very, very proud of myself to be able to be a part of that. But with me being in the program, or with the program ending for me on my end, doesn't mean that the NASCAR Diversity Series has come to an end, as today I have the very last guest for the NASCAR Diversity Series for the Off-Field Players Podcast, and she is a very special guest. Is actually, funny enough, she's interning in the place that I was interning at last summer when I was in the program. And but she's going to be on here to tell her story. And Alex, I'm going to give you the floor. Just introduce yourself, tell everybody about yourself, and also where you go to school and what department are you in with the NASCAR Diversity Internship Program.
Okay. Thank you, Phillip, for that wonderful introduction. For all the listeners / viewers out there, my name is Alex, as Phillip said. I am a grad student at Columbia University studying sports management. I got my bachelor's degree in communications at the Howard University. Have to plug my alma mater, my HBCU. I am from Southern California. And yeah, that's a little bit about me. That's like my educational background, or my residential background. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if y'all heard that. She was at Columbia, Ivy League. So I mean, definitely big deal. And also, she's being a Howard too, HBCU pride. I mean, there was a lot of HBCU representation in NDIP this summer for sure. We had folks coming from Bethune-Cookman, like Sydney Brown, who was on the first episode. Who else we had? We had Maya, who was at FAMU, Florida A&M. So yeah, definitely a lot of HBCU
there was
representation.
a Howard Law student too. I'm like blanking on her name.
Yeah, Denasia Robinson. Yeah, she was on episode number 3 for the NASCAR Diversity Series. So yeah, Howard Law for sure. So definitely that connect. But I mean, I don't mean to brag, but knowing we got a little bit of a New York connection here, I went to the Harvard of Queens and St. John's University. So
okay,
just tie in a little bit of I got the semi Ivy League experience when I was in school. But yeah, that's definitely awesome. So yeah, like Alex, it's definitely great for you to come on, and also just hearing that you're going after your master's in sport management, which is a huge deal. Of course, with me being a sport management student myself when I was an undergrad, definitely great to see that there's other folks in the program that are also going after a sports management degree.
Yeah.
Right on. So I was just going forward, and I heard you mention that you were born and raised in Southern California, and I'm sure, of course, being from Southern California, like you probably were exposed to a lot of different sports growing up. I mean, California is like a state where sports are practically played here year round. So just to learn a little bit more about yourself, and for the OFPs to learn more about you as an individual. Can you go back a little bit and describe what was your first introduction to sports, whether that was a sport you played growing up, a sport you watched, or a sport that you were introduced to by your parents or sibling? What was your upbringing in sports like coming up?
Oh, wow. Like you said, in Southern California, you can do anything. Anything's available here. The first thing that I can remember actually was riding horses. It was me being interested in being an equestrian, which I still dabble in today. Not competitively, I haven't lately, but I just love horses. I grew up in kind of like the suburbs of LA, and like this area that I lived in had a lot of farmland, and there was this street that had all these horses, and I was just obsessed. Like I was obsessed with horses, and I used to tell my dad, like, please don't take me, please. I just want to feed them carrots. Like, and um, luckily he was like, you have this interest, I'm going to put you in some lessons. So that was like my first real experience in sports. And then I kind of did that off and on. And then I got into like every kid in America does, playing soccer. And I actually got really into soccer. I played competitive soccer on like the club level for a really long time. And then I did that and playing competitive basketball. And I kind of really, really got competitive in basketball by the time I think I got to like, I think the 8th grade is when I really started taking it seriously. Like before then I would like play and then not play and then play and then not play. And then once I got to middle school, like I really started taking it serious, and I played that all throughout high school. And unfortunately I couldn't play soccer and basketball at the same time because they're in the same season.
Right.
So it just couldn't work out. I couldn't do that. I don't know if it's the same season in other states. I'm not sure about that. But in California, at least, can't do it. So I had to kind of like put the soccer ball down. And yeah, those were kind of like my first experiences. But when I think about like my very first interaction with sport, it was that. And actually, I had some interaction with like racing too, because my dad, as a car salesman, he ran a local dealership, and my great uncle actually was he's in the NHRA Hall of Fame. He's like,
oh wow,
yeah, he had a famous car, and so like my dad's always been really into it. Obviously he's into cars, so like I've had some experiences in that too, in like that regard. But yeah, I think my first real experience though was like with the horse. When I really, really think back to like my earliest experience, it was that.
Yeah, I mean, that's very interesting to know. I know equestrian is not really a sport that you hear a lot of people talking about, and
Uh-huh.
especially, with you being in it, just hearing, you started out with horses. I mean, that's definitely pretty cool
Yeah.
because, you think about like horse racing, like Kentucky
Mm-hmm.
Derby, like the Belmont Stakes. I mean, I'm keeping up with horse racing. Like I have the Kentucky Derby circled every year on the calendar, but I think that's like, if you're a casual fan, but just to hear, about equestrian, that's, definitely something unique. And even
Yeah.
transferring that into like ball and stick sports like soccer and basketball, like what made you want to, focus more on basketball instead of like soccer?
Um, you know what? I think it was timing. I
Hmm.
think I was in that transition period where I was able to do both at the time, and I just had to pick. And at the time I was playing basketball at the time, I um really loved my teammates, I was just enjoying it more. And I think I just stuck with it. It was just kind of a timing thing. And I, we don't always, I don't know if we talk about this on this podcast, but I'm bring it up. A lot of times when it comes to people of color in certain sports, I think
Hmm.
to comfortability. And not that, I don't think I thought about it at the time, but I think um, I was comfortable there. I was comfortable there, and I was comfortable with the people, and it just kind of like naturally happens without me even thinking about it. Like what basketball culture
Hmm.
is us. So I think it just kind of like naturally happened for me. And not that with other sports I still like was able to be myself and thrive and have a lot of fun, but you don't see as much of us in some of these other sports that I was just previously talking about.
Right.
Um, so I think that was part of it too. But I think on a more subconscious level for me when I look back on it, but I think um, like really most of it was timing. Most of it was like that's just what I was doing at the time. It was easy to continue to transition into it in high school. The club team I was playing for, the AAU team I was playing for,
Hmm.
kind of fed into that school. We were from the same area. We were going to be playing with each other. It just happened.
Yeah, and definitely, you do mention how the comfortability of you being around basketball, and yeah, that is one thing that we do touch on the Off Field Players podcast. We do emphasize the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion in all
Mm-hmm.
facets of sports because we think about being in the sports industry, we meet people from all different walks of life
Yeah.
and people from all different backgrounds, and just understanding that everybody has their own unique story, especially with unique stories where, you talk about how, in equestrian, that not a lot of Black people are into equestrian, let alone watch it.
Yeah.
But just to be able to, hear from someone like yourself that's in the sport and understand that, there is, a little bit of lack in diversity in
Hmm.
that particular sport. Does show a range of diversity of, where things are starting to go now with what people of color are starting to get into.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I know at the beginning of the show, you talked about being from Southern California, and you
Hmm.
mentioned that you were from around Chino. You
Yeah.
said, like, what was growing up there like?
What was growing up in Chino like? Okay, that's a I have to think about that question. I think it was great. I think it was very like the area I'm from is like largely called the Inland Empire,
Hmm.
and I think it's where a lot of people come to raise their families. It's like this bustling, developing like conglomerate of suburbs. So I had a good time. I think it was just a great place to grow up. There is like a lot of diversity throughout the Inland Empire. So I've
Hmm.
gotten to get to know a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds, and I think that's really helped me just move forward in life and in my career and education wise, etc. Just helped me be really open to a lot of thoughts and a lot of opinions and a lot of different people. And I am grateful for that. So yeah, like I guess that's kind of what it was like. It was a very typical like suburb. And like I said, it did have little like rural parts where there were like horses and cows. But it was still like Chino is still close enough to other things. It's not like in the middle of nowhere. So I was able to do a lot of different things. And like my mom and like her family are from LA. My mom moved out here when she was actually pregnant with me. So I got to experience kind of a lot of different things in a lot of different cities and cultures. So Chino was cool in that regard, where it kind of, although it's like a suburb, there's so many different things surrounding it, and it's not too far off to where you're in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
So yeah, that's kind of what was like very family oriented. Most people in Chino, like it's very residential. So yeah, lots of people actually big sports too. Not just Chino, but the Inland Empire became this really big sports hub as I was growing up. So that was really cool too. There was a lot of competition in that regard. So yeah, that's a little bit about what it was like.
Yeah, and I know on the basketball side, one thing that Chino is famous for is definitely the Ball brothers, Lonzo,
Yes.
LaMelo, Leangelo. So, I mean,
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, like I thought, I never even heard of like Chino. Well, I knew Chino was a place that existed, but when the Ball
Mm-hmm.
brothers were coming up and all the hype that surrounded them,
Yeah.
like being at Chino Hills High,
Mm-hmm.
it really did just in a way put that part of the country or that part of California on the map, just
Oh yeah.
how they were able to, just like come up through there.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, them. Obviously at Chino Hills High School, and then you have lots of other people that grew up in the Empire. Kawhi's from.
Well,
I
yeah,
always
he's
want to say
from.
Riverside, but it might be Moreno Valley.
Yeah,
It's one of
yeah.
the two.
I think he's from Moreno Valley because I know
Okay.
I think he went to high school in Riverside, but I know he was born in Moreno
Okay.
Valley. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's just to mention a few, but there's like so many, and not just on the basketball side with football, baseball. Like it just
Hmm.
became, this place, a huge sports hub, and just a friendly place. I think to raise families. Um, it's a pretty cool place. Like I think when it comes to that, it's a very diverse place in order to just raise your family and do the things you want to do. It's quiet. It's very quiet. Nothing really much happens. It's not too fun to be in your 20s. That I wouldn't recommend spending your 20s in Chino. But like when you're a kid, yeah, it's amazing. It's a perfect place to grow up. If you ask me, I think it was great.
Yeah, definitely for sure, and that's definitely great to hear. So, Alex, I want to transition more into you wanting to get into the sports industry. So, this is a
Hmm.
question I've been asking all the interns. Like, what was something or what was a moment that you had, whether that was in high school and college, that made you want to decide of like I want to go into the sports industry?
Yeah, I actually didn't realize that that's what I wanted to do until I think my junior year of college. Um, although I had like played sports all my life, I never really knew what I can do outside of playing. I had no clue like where I could necessarily get a job in it. So I was at Howard, like I mentioned, getting my degree in communications, and like at Howard, everybody has some type of internship. Everybody has some type of something going on.
Oh, yeah.
So everybody's always searching for the next thing, looking things up. And I thought like, maybe like one of these teams around here, has something I can do. And I looked up, the Washington Wizards, and I got the job. It was one of the best times I've ever had. I enjoyed every single aspect of that job. I had the time of my life. I was like, this is the greatest thing on earth. And I realized that I can combine my communications degree with sports. And I just didn't realize that I could do that before. So like working there really helped me just like see different things. And a lot of people that I was working with at the time were grad students, and they were getting their master's in sports management, and they had bachelors in other things. So I was like, oh, like this is the perfect way I can combine this. And I just kind of started thinking about it more and more and more, because I love that job so freaking much. And it wasn't even like when I applied, I applied as an events intern, and I didn't wind up getting that position, and I wound up being a group sales intern. And I didn't even apply for the group sales internship, but I wound up like getting it like through applying for the events, and then them thinking I was like better off here. And I had no idea. I didn't know how to sell anything. I was like, what? Like, I was like, huh? Like, I really was like, but I wanted to do it. And I was like, this is going to be so much fun. Like, yes, I'll do it. I'll learn. And I did. And it wound up being so amazing. And I got to work with so many different people. So it really made me realize, oh, I can do this, I can do that. And then I saw people while I was there within the company moving on from different positions within the company. So I was like, oh, this is totally doable. And then COVID hit. That dreadful thing. It hit. I was in my junior year of college. And nobody knew what to do. So that internship ended prematurely because of that. And I was just so sad. We were all sad because sports weren't on. And so I was kind of figuring out what my next move was. The year passed, and we were all sitting on our laptops in class. And, I was like, okay, well, what's next? Like, what's next for me? And I started looking into grad programs. I was like, you know what? I really love this. And I met so many different people at this internship that were getting their master's in sports management. I met people that were already working there, full time, that had their masters in it. So I was like, like maybe this is what I should do. And I looked up different programs and I applied, and here I am. So that's kind of the long version of that answer.
Yeah, and definitely get to hear about like your first foray into the sports industry with the Wizards, and even especially you saying that it was something that you didn't have any experience in. And I know the one thing that I like to tell the OFPs on the podcast is you're not exactly going to get like the job that you may want starting out. You're gonna have to experience something new, but the beauty of that is that you could pick up different skills with the job that you probably weren't as interested in, or maybe you weren't familiar in with the intricacies that are involved in it. But obviously you displayed that you were versatile and understanding how ticket sales work, and just how you're tying in your communications degree with trying to sell tickets, because I assume what you were doing with the Wizards, you're probably making cold calls, or you're probably giving people the rundown of the different packages that they had for the Wizards season.
Yeah, definitely. That's exactly what was involved. And it just really helped me get out of my comfort zone and learn different parts of the business. And I think that was really important for me to just kind of learn that. And I think that just makes you a more well-rounded person when you know different parts of the business. You know how this works. You know how this department works. It helps you work with people better. So it was a really great experience, and they were great with just coaching me up, telling me what to do, giving me the guidelines. Everybody there was fantastic.
Yeah, I bet. So Alex, in regards to the people that you've had as mentors, because I know the one thing that I really emphasize a lot, not just for people working in the sports industry, but for any industry, is the power of mentorship. So I wanted to ask, who who are the people that you consider to be a mentors of yours, whether that was a coach, a professor, a guidance counselor, an academic advisor? Like, who would you say has been a mentor on your journey to working in the sports industry?
Yeah, that's a really good question. That you ask really insightful questions. I'm like,
Oh, thank you.
I have to think about this. I need a second. Um, this is a cliche answer, but I think the first people I can think about are my parents,
Hmm.
um, and more specifically my dad. Just because he's really the one that I mentioned before, is like the one that introduced me to sports. My mom does not care about sports really. Like um, she has been a mentor to me in a different type of way, but when it comes to
Hmm.
sports, and I'm my dad's only kid. I'm his only daughter, so like he doesn't
Hmm.
have any boys to talk to about sports. So it's just me. Like, and it's always been just me. So I think he's fostered that love. He's always been the one that was like outside dribbling with me. He's the one that taught me I need to know how to dribble with my left hand, not just my right. Those type of things. And he kind of fostered that love for me. And then I think too, um, he is my first example of like professionalism, but also um, just relationship building that doesn't have
Hmm.
to be like guarded. He just There's nobody else I know better than that. And like growing up in Chino, like everybody knows my dad. Everybody knows him, and it's because he has that certain personality, and he's just so nice to everybody, and he that's how he does business. Um, and so I think I just kind of learned that, and I picked that up, and I kind of grew up around him at the dealership. He would like take me with him, and he would teach me lessons every day, like you come in here. I was like 3 or 4 years old. You say hello, how are you? Like, yes sir,
Hmm.
no sir. And just learning manners and learning respect was huge, and I think that takes you a long way in just all different parts of life. So to give him his credit on that in terms of mentorship and just being a good person and being a good professional, and being well liked, I think is important. So he really really helped with that. And that's just like the first person I can think of that's been a mentor to me in that way, and even with sports, and introduced me to sports and fostering that love with me. Um, and then when I think about, I guess, in the business, there's been several people with different internships that have absolutely like really helped me and mentored me and coached me up. My boss at the Wizards was amazing. She was just, actually, she wrote me my letter of recommendation to get into Columbia.
Right on.
And obviously, that's incredibly helpful coming from a person that has her prestige and just has her title within the business. She's very well respected. So she has really helped me and had conversations with me about different things. And I actually, as part of my internship, like interviewed her and just about her journey. Um, Also at NASCAR, they gave us each a mentor. Jordan has been extremely helpful in just talking about her journey. And as somebody that also was in the program,
Hmm.
she's been extremely helpful. And I think it's also helpful to have mentors of different demographics, especially when it comes to age range. Like, I think it's really important to have people that are a few years kind of older than you, and it's really important to have people that are like way ahead of you too in their careers. I think
Oh
it's
yeah.
important to have both, so you get both perspectives and just kind of understand how to navigate and get all of those different things. So those are a few people that I think have really been influential to me and just have showed me the way. Also, my boss at Sonoma Raceway has been absolutely amazing. I think she's a phenomenal woman in sports. I'm always advocating for the women in sports, and I
There
think
you
I've had
go.
some incredible women that have really right that have really really kind of just shown me the way. And I think this is such a male dominated industry. When you see women that hold like important titles, and you see women that like are really just boss women in their field, it's inspiring within itself, even if I'm not having these conversations with them. But they've all been so open and so gracious with giving me their time and advice. Those are a few people that I think have just been amazing.
Yeah, I mean, that was probably the best answer I've heard when it
Oh,
came to like the mentorship art, because you're talking about starting with your dad, and
mm-hmm,
dad being a girl dad, that's
mm-hmm,
definitely big deal right now, especially in the Black community for sure. And even just hearing about, like the lady at the Wizards who wrote the recommendation, who was like kind enough to write you your recommendation letter for you to get into
Yeah.
Columbia. That's huge. And I
Hmm.
think like the one thing that I really, find the importance in a mentorship, and I'll even talk a little bit about myself here for a bit. When I was first being introduced to the sports industry, my first ever mentor was Taj Deshambe, who was formerly the VP of Government and Public Affairs for the Oakland Athletics.
Okay.
And, of course, with him being an Oakland native himself and just being able to, hear from him just, what he's been able to do for the community through the platform of the team, it
Yeah.
really inspired me to want to continue to carry that kind of persona to, utilize like where I come from, and also just trying to use it for the platform working in the sports industry, but also just trying to use it to inspire the next generation that comes behind me. And even,
Hmm.
also with other people in the community that, I consider to be my mentors. Like I was at church yesterday, and I had a chance to meet with my pastor, Dr. Lawrence Van Hook, who's been in my life for about uh, 8 years, I would say.
Hmm.
And just knowing that he's like my mentor from a spiritual side, with me believing, like trusting in my faith, and doing everything I can to just be an impact in the community and impact in my church, and being able to use what how I am as a person to promote like what I'm trying to I encourage more people to get into, like through my platform. And also with coaches, I played baseball coming up, and I had coaches that were I consider to be mentors in my life. And then of course on the NASCAR side, just being in the program and gaining the experience I've gained, I've been able to connect with people that I now consider to be my mentors, like Rachel Amario being one of them, and also Tyrese Manigault, who was my mentor for the summer. I believe that what the program has been able to do for us to be able to pair us with people that are higher up in the sport, and that are
Hmm.
being used to bring influence into our lifestyle. I think that's definitely a huge deal for what mentorship can do for an individual, especially if they're trying to move up in the industry.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So we got to the mentorship side, and now I want to know about the just like that, like your journey as far as going through the process of applying for grad school, applying for different internships. Because one of the biggest challenges that's currently in the sports industry at the moment is the application pool. Like, I mean, there's thousands of people that are trying to work in the industry, work
Yeah.
for like a major league team, a sports agency, a sports organization, or like anything that
Yeah.
they can just get a hold on to be able to work in the industry. Like from your perspective, and you can also align this too with getting into an Ivy League college, on the
Hmm.
grad school side. Like, what would you say are the biggest challenges for someone that's trying to work in the sports industry?
See, another really good question that I need to take some time to think about.
I had this
What
planned
are
out. I had this planned out.
some of the challenges? Well, I think you just mentioned one, which is everybody wants to do this.
Hmm.
Everybody wants to do this. This is a amazing thing. This is cool. Most people love sports, not everybody, obviously, but like it's sports. Like everybody wants to work in it. I think. Obviously not everybody, but you know what I mean when I say that. So that's a huge challenge. Just the application pool is just it's broad.
It's
Um,
massive.
so yeah, um, whew, yeah, that's a challenge. I'm trying to think of another challenge trying to work in it. I guess that kind of goes without saying that it's competitive as well. When you have all these different people, that makes it more competitive. Um, I think working in the industry is it can be very taxing. It's
Hmm.
very rewarding, but I don't think people realize that it is a damn near 24/7 job. Like, there's always a late night event. If you're like working for a team, there's always a game that if a home game, you have to be at it. And if that game last well into the night, you're still there. That still means you got to show up to work the next morning
Oh
at
yeah.
9 a.m. like everybody else, even if you didn't get home till midnight. Um, and the same thing goes for other different um, areas of the industry, not just with teams, but also with agencies, and just like making sure you're there for your clients. There's all different types of things, but like sports is, it's a grind. So I will say that can be a challenge, although it is incredibly rewarding. I think that can be a challenge if you don't necessarily know, and like kind of getting your feet into it. That's a big challenge. Um, but I guess those are the three I can kind of think of. It's just, it's competitive, and it's very time consuming. I think those are two challenges that I think are big. Although, like I said, the rewards are infinite if you really love it. But if no matter what, it's a grind.
Yeah, and I definitely want to point out one thing that you just said, like in regards to you have to love it. I mean,
Yeah.
I know what I've learned being, in the internships I've been a part of, whether that was in NASCAR and baseball, or even just,
Mm-hmm.
the things that I was doing at school.
Mm-hmm.
Being at St. John's, I was like I took time outside the classroom to do sports broadcasting for the basketball team, the soccer team,
Mm-hmm.
the men, and the baseball team. And there were some times where I had to sacrifice weekends. I had to,
Yeah.
there were times where I had to call like a 7 o'clock game, like in the middle of the week, and then game wouldn't be over until until 10 o'clock. I had to go back to my room, get an assignment done,
Yep.
and just repeat the whole
Yeah.
thing for the next game, and just and there are even times where I had to sacrifice dates with my girlfriend just to be able to
Mm-hmm.
call a game. But I think the one thing that I really learned is that you have to love what you do to really want to be in this, and I think that's
Yeah.
really ties into the satisfaction level that people have when it comes to working in the sports industry. I know when I did my episode talking about the internship experiences that I've had, and you could go and people could go back and watch that like on Spotify and YouTube when you get the chance. But I talk a lot about the satisfaction level of people that are working in the industry
Mm-hmm.
and how that satisfaction ties into people not only just working in it, but loving the work that they're doing.
Yeah.
Because the purpose of being an off field player is that, yeah, you're going to produce big results, like the athletes that you see on the field, the coaches that you see
Mm-hmm.
on the field. But the people that, that you see on the field, like, or people that are working off the field, are working just as hard as the people on it. And that's the one thing that really ties all into the passion that people have for sports. But I want to segue into the just understanding that there's many challenges and there's many barriers that you're going to have to cross through to get into the industry. And I like how you mentioned just the importance of seeing women working in sports, and especially with the times that we're in, where we're seeing women holding CEO positions, or like C-suite
Mm-hmm.
positions, and corporations, and even on the sports side, we're now starting to see women working in general manager roles. We're seeing them working in
Mm-hmm.
coaching roles, and like also
Mm-hmm.
being like in director roles for different departments and other sports organizations. So I want to ask, like, what do you think for the OFPs that are listening? What do you think that they have to do to be able to stand out to, like, when they're filling out their job applications, whether that's for school, an internship, or a full-time gig in the sports industry? Like, how do you think people can stand out in regards to what they can help bring to the table to an organization that they want to work for?
Um, okay. I think the key thing that I've learned is updating your resume
Mm-hmm.
consistently, and specifically looking at those descriptions and seeing how that applies to your experience, and making sure you list that on the resume. That is key. Like that right there. I know that sounds obvious, but it really does take time and effort to tailor your resume to each application that you do, because a lot of times teams, agencies, leagues, etc., brands are looking for something very specific, and that same job title might be a different description at a different company. So that's one thing to know. Um, and it may be different, per city, per team. You know what I mean? Like, it can be the same title, and you might just hold different responsibilities. I think that's important. I think being like I was talking about the Wizards, seeing like, you know, diversity of different job titles and people holding different things. I think that that's really important. I think a lot of times people want to see multiple things. Like, it's okay to be one track and it's okay to like only have done this thing. There's nothing wrong with that. But I also think there's a lot of benefits to trying different things and having experience in lots of different things, like putting your hand into multiple different pots. Like, oh, I've done this and I've done that. I think that just makes you a more diverse candidate. And then I think when it comes down to like interviewing, and I think it comes down to like getting into school, or getting that job interview, I think it's really about authenticity. Like, which also sounds really cliche, but I mean that. And actually, you know, one of the mentors or advisors that we have set up at Columbia, he mentions that over and over and over again. And I was like, oh, okay. And he's big times and he's done everything you can imagine. So it's like, oh, if he's saying it, like, it must be true. He's like, you have to build authentic relationships and you have to be yourself. And not everything I think has to be like picture perfect and like button up. Like, it's okay to show personality. It's okay to laugh. It's okay to like show a little bit of yourself, because at the end of the day, like we talked about, all of these people like that are in the industry work all the time. They work all the time and we're all working together. So if you do not get along well with the people that you're working with, or, you know, they don't necessarily vibe with your personality, like that can be an issue. So I think showing your authentic self and seeing what environment is right for you is super important, because you're going to work with these people all the time. So it has to be some type of like compatibility. And I think that that's really key. So I think it's really important to just be yourself. Be yourself. Be professional, but be yourself. I think that's key, and that's been key even with like getting into school. That, like, you know, I wrote my statement that was very authentic. I remember like I just kind of poured into it and I talked about personal experiences and I made it very uniquely me. And I think that was important in like getting into school and in different internships too. It's just getting on that interview and, you know, knowing your stuff. Like I said, being professional, but also, you know, just being you. Like, because at the end of the day, that's who somebody's hiring to, not just your resume. You, like, what makes you stand out? Like, are you fun to be around, or do you like the same things? Do you enjoy the same things? You guys crack the same jokes. Like, it's important. It's not everything, obviously, but I think authenticity is huge. Like in any industry, not just in the sports industry, but work culture is important, and showing who you are helps you better find the culture that works for you.
Oh yeah, and I definitely agree that authenticity is very important when it comes to the application process, because I think with how interviewing is starting to go, I think people can weed out if somebody's not being honest with themselves about where they've been or what they've been able to do and their
Mm-hmm.
experiences. And I think when you do emphasize that you're not just trying to go after a job because you're the most qualified. You're also trying to go after a job because you're going to hope that people are going to want to work with you.
Yeah.
And being put in that position of where you're not coming off as authentic, I think that does holding yourself back, and what what you can embrace about yourself. And yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely agree with being personable and also just being true to yourself. I feel like honesty can go a long way
Yeah.
in different areas.
Of course. And obviously there's like limits to it. I'm not saying like I kept saying be professional but be yourself. Like there's some things that you have to learn what's workplace appropriate and what's interview appropriate. Of course, don't share everything. But because I think that's a problem some people do too. But just, yeah, be you. And I think that takes people a long way. And I think it's hard, like when you're just starting out, and like even for me, like I just trying to figure out what direction I want to take my career, and still being like very young in my career. it is nerve wracking. Like, admittedly, so it is nerve wracking. Interviews are hard. Interviews are nerve wracking. So I'm not even saying it's just super easy to just completely be yourself, but I do think that it's the best course of action.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'll say like literally today, I had back to back interviews. One was with AI, and the other one was with real people. So,
Uh-huh.
you definitely can see a difference in how the way that people are starting to interview now, and how you have to be prepared going into an interview, just and also being able to stay professional in that regard. And but I know another thing too that can maybe get sidetracked from depending on who you're working with or the people you're talking with is that like I think working in the sports industry too, it comes with a lot of humility as well. I think
Mm-hmm.
if you're a humble person, then people are going to respect you for that. But not only do you have to come off as being humble to others, you also have to be humble to yourself, and just
Yeah.
knowing that with how competitive this industry is, there are thousands of people that are wanting to be in your shoes, and they can all be taken away at some point. So I think just the importance of being grateful for
Oh,
just
yeah.
even having a job in the sports industry. I think that definitely needs to be emphasized a lot more.
Oh, yeah. That's huge. I think you make a really great point with that. It's just being grateful and recognizing what we said earlier, that this industry is very competitive. So just being grateful and showing up every day and doing your absolute best goes a long way too.
Yeah. Now, as we're going to transition more into the NASCAR side of things,
Okay.
and being at Sonoma Raceway, of course, you're in one of the most beautiful parts of the country in wine
Yeah.
country, Sonoma County,
Yes.
and yeah, and just knowing that that's where I was last summer, and just having that experience of working in NASCAR weekend, working in NHRA weekend. I've
Hmm.
noticed on your social media pages because yeah, one thing about Alex is that she does pretty cool TikToks for what she's been able to do over the summer. So yeah, teasing you there in that regard. But yeah, like just talk about like what has it been like to work at Sonoma and just be able to work in a sport like NASCAR.
It's been amazing. Like you said, Sonoma is beautiful, and I think it's a really unique track. It's one of, I mean, I'm tooting Sonoma's horn, but I think it's one of the most unique tracks that NASCAR races run through.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and I think it's really been amazing to actually work at a track because I've been able to experience a lot of different motorsports, not just like NASCAR, but I just got done doing NHRA and Ferrari
Hmm.
Challenge. Like,
Hmm.
there's so many different cool things that happen there that I've been able to experience. So it's been phenomenal. Like, aside from it's beautiful. Like, it's gorgeous. Like, there's no other place you'd rather be. You just watch cars like go through the hills. It's a beautiful site to be at. So that makes it super easy to work there. It's just wonderful. Um, but yeah, I think working at the track has been amazing, and it's provided me a lot of different experiences and seeing like motorsports from tons of different angles. Like I said, Ferrari, NASCAR, and NHRA have just been amazing things to be able to be a part of each and every one of them, the planning, the preparation, and the execution.
Yeah, definitely. And I know, like early on, you mentioned that you had an uncle that was in
Mm-hmm.
the NHRA Hall of Fame. Like, actually, I want to see if you could touch a little bit more on that as well.
Oh yeah, I can't. I mean, I would love to get my dad on here because he knows every single thing. But he was one of the first African Americans to do it, to own a
Wow.
car. He didn't drive
Mm.
it; he owned the car.
Mm.
And
That's saying a
so
lot.
yeah, it was a big deal, and it was um, in the '60s. So like
Mm.
even a bigger deal, you know what I mean? So I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud to be a part of that legacy. Um, but yeah, that was something that my dad had been involved in. He used to run around with his uncle and get parts and like try to make the car the fastest and travel all around the country with him doing that. So unfortunately, like I didn't get to be a part of it because it happened I was not alive in the '60s.
Mm.
But it is a source of a lot of pride, and it's been amazing to be able to be exposed to that and like take trips like to the NHRA Hall of Fame and like check out the car and wear the T-shirts and stuff. Um, so that's really been amazing, and I think that um, yeah, I think that it's just really how it's fostered. I think my interest in it too. Because although that was a part of something that I learned growing up, it was something that I came back to later. Like up until then, up until now, I hadn't really been into motorsports, although it was part of like something that my dad was into and something that my uncle did. I personally hadn't actually got into the sport. So to be able to do this on a professional level is really amazing, and it's kind of full circle.
Did you go to any NHRA events growing up, or was the NHRA event at Sonoma like your first experience?
Yeah, I've been to a few actually.
Mm.
There's several different tracks in Southern California. Pomona's one of them. Pomona's a big one.
Oh yeah.
That my dad would take me to. He loves to drag races. So yeah, he used to take me when I was little, and I would enjoy it. But it was just not something I actually did. It was more so for enjoyment, not like professional, obviously not professional purposes as a kid. But even just getting into the motorsport and like driving myself, it was just not something that I did. But yeah, I've been to a few.
But what about NASCAR? What was your introduction like to being enthusiastic about NASCAR?
Um, Same, my dad.
Okay, so
Just
keep
being
going.
into racing and being into cars, that's his thing, that's his legacy. So it's something that I was kind of like always tagging along and doing. And he's the one that actually was like, you should apply to this. And
Hmm.
he was the one that was like, because he loves it. So he was like, you should do it. And I was like, you know what? I should do it. And, when I was thinking about like how great it would be, I was like, this is going to be amazing because it's going to open me up to understand a totally different sport than like I've been working in and that I've been used to. I've, like I said, like towards, as I got older, I focused a lot on basketball, and that was just kind of like my main like focus. I was like, one track, like this is all I want to do. But people in sports, people work for different like sports, different leagues, different teams all the time. And I'm like, to be a more well-rounded person in this business, I need to learn more. And this was the perfect opportunity to be able to do that. And, my dad had already fostered that kind of like love, like motorsports in me. So it was just great to learn a lot more about NASCAR specifically and just learn more about the business side of it. Watching it is one thing, but learning about how it works on the operations side has been really cool.
Oh yeah, and I could definitely see where you're coming from. And even though like my upbringing in NASCAR, really just in motorsports itself, was a little bit different. It was really early on, being 3 years old, and
Oh,
like I was
wow.
like yeah like that young. But that really tied into, because when I was a kid, my overall passions was NASCAR and really just cars in general. I think
Mm-hmm.
without having the enthusiasm they had for cars, I probably wouldn't have been able to get into NASCAR. But there was also a
Yeah.
time where the folks in my family, they grew up like right in the car culture, from
Okay.
racing and doing things like that. And I like to tell people all the time that I'll watch anything with four wheels and a motor. So from starting out watching NASCAR and then starting to get enthusiasm for other forms of motorsports, from like
Yeah.
IndyCar, Formula One,
Mm-hmm.
World of Outlaws, IMSA. Even like two two wheels in a motor, like in motocross and motorcycle racing. Just anything that was auto racing specific, like I was into it, and
Yeah.
it really just kind of carried on to understanding the business aspects of it, because I was more of like the guy that was into racing for like the history behind it. I
Hmm.
knew, well, you could give me a pop quiz right now on NASCAR trivia and I'll ace it. Just
Okay.
like learning about all the drivers, about the tracks, the like the different history of the teams, and just all facets of NASCAR that was like throughout the 75 years that the sport has been around. I just picked up on it, I read about it, like I followed it, like all the changes with the championship format. It was really just how passionate I was to be able to embrace the sport for what it is, and then having those opportunities to work in the sport and like learning about it from like how teams operate, how tracks are operating, and then of course this summer with me being in the weekly series, I learned how a series is ever able to operate and what their responsibilities are to help the drivers and the tracks that they're sanctioning. I think I really took a lot from doing that, and especially being at Sonoma. Sonoma falls under the banner of the Speedway Motorsports
Mm-hmm.
Incorporation, and they own like a bunch of different tracks across the country,
Yeah.
and just knowing that Sonoma has so much unique aspects into it when you think about all the tracks that NASCAR races on the circuit, where it's a road course, it's in like a very remote area. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's hills, there's downhills, there's
Mm-hmm.
straightaways, there's a bunch of different things that are involved at Sonoma, and just being able to experience the racing there, yeah, it's definitely huge that we were able to have that experience for the summer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So just going over more into the aspects of the program, and
Mm-hmm.
I know like the one thing that the interns that were at the NASCAR partner departments, maybe some of the things they weren't being involved in, but for the things that you were being involved in, what would you say with us being in a diversity internship program? How do we encourage people of color to become more aware about the opportunities to intern with a sport like NASCAR?
Another amazing question. Um, I think there's a few ways. I think you can do it the traditional way, word of mouth, talking to your classmates, talking to your friends about your experiences. I think you can do it the more, tech savvy way, go on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a huge professional platform where you can just share your experiences and tag the people that have helped you along the way. That's another way. And I think with what Generation Z loves to do, share on social media. Like you mentioned, I love making TikToks and I frequently make TikToks about my experiences and just, share them with my friends, share them with my classmates via my social channels. So that's a way too. I think like those are three very simple ways, word of mouth, via LinkedIn, a more professional platform, or via your social media channels. There's nothing wrong with, sharing some of your, work experiences on those channels if you're comfortable with it. So I think those are a few ways of sharing. And just getting it out there and showing that it's fun and showing that, we are involved and that NASCAR can be diverse and that it is diverse. And just showing up and showing out and talking about the experiences and being open to just sharing and when there is info sessions encouraging your friends to join them or even if encouraging your friends to go to a race race or two
Oh yeah.
just getting the word out I think is really important or even taking somebody you can even go that far to say hey like you might like this coming out to a race like I really want to go to a race and foster love that way like I remember um when we were in Charlotte and Alvin Kamara was talking to us like that was kind of something he did he was
Hmm.
like oh I just saw it on TV and like now I'm really into it now he's into spreading the word about it so we can follow his lead maybe not on that grand of a scale but on a smaller scale of just sharing our love for it and being like NASCAR our own little mini ambassadors.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know one thing that I did last summer was I invited my like because like my mom, she's never been to a NASCAR race before,
Oh wow.
and
Uh-huh.
since she knew I was at Sonoma last summer,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, hey mom, you could bring yourself and aunt and uncle
Mm-hmm.
out to the race if you want to.
Yeah.
It's like I work there, and but yeah, like they like just even like you said with the word of mouth being the motivator to bring people out to the races, especially young people.
Yeah.
And like I could say that with my mom and my aunts being at the race like last summer, like they said they loved it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I know I remember like I can just tell the story of when NASCAR came out that weekend. It was the Cup race, and they had the seats like I don't know like about the seats where like that's like on the back end of the track where they're going like down the hill once they pass the
Yes.
horseshoe turn. Yeah, like
Yes.
they were sitting behind there, and yeah, like I was walking over there just to find them and check on them, see how they were doing. And they all had their earplugs in because it was so
Mm-hmm.
loud. But like I know later on, my mom told me that my uncle he took out his earplugs because he had to get the full on experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell people all the time that I think going to a NASCAR race, the TV doesn't do justice in regards
Oh
to the
no.
kind of experience that you'll have being there in person.
Yeah. It doesn't. Nothing compares. It's so loud.
Yeah.
And it's so loud, but it's exhilarating at the same time. You almost like you cannot look away. And you're just like really, really invested. And I think that is something that it takes you being there, and it takes you just being in that atmosphere and being in that presence, and you can easily get hooked.
Oh yeah, for sure. So, like, as far as your all-time favorite experience, like, if you were to make like a whole scrapbook for the
Hmm.
time you spent at Sonoma, what would you say has been your most favorite moment being there?
Getting baptized by Nitro.
Oh,
Um, that that
yep.
just happened to me last week, and
Hmm.
it was so much fun. I was like, oh my god, this was just so. My eyes were watering. Like I was like, I couldn't see anything, but I was like, this is amazing. And I got to be right down there as the car started up and made their pass, and it was just wow. Like that was crazy. And people don't realize that those just not only do you need regular, if you need like
Hmm.
months. And I was just that was, I think, probably my favorite experience was that was amazing. It was a perk, like everything that I got to do there was fun and amazing. Like I worked a lot in the media center. That was like one of my main jobs is, helping my boss in the media center and managing that for all the different events. But I guess that's a thing for everybody that hasn't done it before is to go get baptized by Nitro.
Oh yeah,
Man,
yeah. I'll tell
man,
you this.
it was an experience. So I think
Mhm.
that was my favorite thing. It was just like an out of body experience, and you jump every time, even though you know it's coming. You're like, oh, like, oh. So, but it's like being on a roller coaster or something. You just like jump. Um, so that was, I think, probably my most memorable experience. I had a lot of fun doing that.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it was like when I was there last summer. It was the first time being at an NHRA. I mean,
Uh huh.
I'm not really like I don't go to a lot of drag races, but I
Mm-hmm.
tell you, just because I had the
Did you get
baptism.
baptized?
Yeah, I got baptized, but not sure last
Hey.
early that I was there like just I think just like it being there. I mean, it's crazy how like when you're like when the cars like when they jump off the line, like literally you can feel the ground shake. It's like an earthquake,
Yeah.
and like it's just and like just how loud it is. I mean, oh my gosh, like
Yeah.
it's like man, I don't know how you could stand literally like 20 feet away from the car and just see it jump off the line like that, just like feeling the heat coming from the exhaust
Man.
pipes and just see him just go like 1,000 miles down the road. I mean, it's insane to me how
Yeah.
people can get used to
And there
that.
was nothing like it. Like, like I had mentioned, like I've been to drag races as a kid, the the noise was like, okay, like I've experienced this before, but being that close when they fire up, oh my goodness. Like I hadn't done that before. And I was just wow. Like, and I don't even know if I need to do it again because like my eyes were watering. Like one baptism was enough, but it was so cool, and it was something that I won't forget. I just won't. It was amazing.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Man, I need to go. Speaking of, I need to go back to go to another HRA
Yeah, you
race like when I get
should.
the chance.
You
I mean,
know,
I've been around too much NASCAR to not
yeah,
HRA.
I love the diversity of it. I will say that. Like
Oh
working
yeah.
at Sonoma has just been really cool because I've gotten to see like multiple forms of motorsport.
Hmm.
And then I think one of my favorite experiences from NASCAR had nothing to do with the actual cars, but like I said, I was working in the media center, um, and I was, just like working the pre and like post race interviews and stuff, and um, the grand marshal came in, and he was from my favorite show, which is Modern Family. I am obsessed with Modern
Yeah,
Family.
that's right. Yeah.
Andy from Modern Family, and he's probably
Hmm.
on. Oh, and he was on Pitch Perfect. That's really his big role.
Hmm.
Yeah, on Pitch Perfect.
Yeah, Adam
But
Levine, right?
yes,
Yep.
and I couldn't like I was blanking out on the name, but I was like internally like, oh my goodness, like this is my guy. Of course, like very professional, like girls like,
Hmm.
hello, how you doing? But
Yeah.
in my head, I was like, this is so cool. Like I literally watch this man all the time on TV. And here he is right now, and like I get to work in this media center and do something of this nature right now. Like it was just really, really cool, and it was like, oh wow, I'm really grateful for this type of moment and to be able to have these, really awesome experiences.
Yeah, and I think what makes NASCAR such a unique sport is just how close the fans can get to the personalities, and the same can be said about NHRA. Because I think when you look at other sports like other major sports like football, basketball, baseball,
Mm-hmm.
hockey, you don't see the fans like being up close where literally you can go walk up to the driver and you could shake their hand, you could ask them for an
Mm-hmm.
autograph, you could take a picture with them. I mean, I think what people can get out of going to a motorsports event is
Mm-hmm.
just the accessibility to be up close to the personalities. And you don't even have to have like well, in some forms you do still need to have like a VIP pass, but just to
Yeah.
be able to be that close where you can literally talk with the drivers. I mean, that's just so. I think that what makes the sport so unique from the fan side, and even just also like working in it, where and like because at the end of the day, these drivers like they're just regular people, and
Yeah.
they want to be treated that way. They understand how big their platform is, and how big of a
Mm-hmm.
star they are. Just being a race car driver, but when you see, I think what really touches me is seeing a kid going up to their favorite driver, and the favorite
Mm-hmm.
driver just stopping and just talking with them, taking a picture with them, just
Yeah.
shaking their hands for autograph, doing the whole
Mm-hmm.
getting the whole fan experience all
Yeah.
in one wrap, and not even having to force it or be like, oh, like they know a person that was able to help them get there, they're just right there.
Yeah. It's definitely really cool in that way. Just yeah, the accessibility part of it, and just NASCAR is different in a lot of different ways, and motorsports are different um, than a lot of different sports when it comes to that thing. Yeah, I would agree with that. I would definitely agree with that in terms of accessibility and being able to see kids be inspired and walk around and like be able to get autographs so easily. Um, I do feel like that's a unique aspect compared to some other professional sports. And yeah, I think that's been cool. Just being able to be a part of it in that type of way, and just being up close and like being very professional, but it also just
Mm.
acknowledging that this is a really cool experience. Will also be like being cool, keeping you cool, and being as professional as possible always. But it's still really cool, and it's definitely a blessing to be able to be a part of such an amazing sport at a professional level like that. Not just as a fan, but as somebody that's involved in producing and executing these events. It's amazing, and it's something that I really love to do.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Well, Alex, it's definitely been great so far, and I want to end our conversation with asking this last question. And just first off, I don't know if I said this to you already, but just congratulations to even being in the program,
Oh,
because
thank
we
you.
understood like how big the application pool was, and
Yeah.
for everybody that I was able to meet with over the summer, and even for those that I was able to interview with like during the diversity series for the Off Field Players podcast. Just
Hmm.
here, I just get a kick out of hearing the stories from other people that are going after the same goal that you and me are trying to go after, and it's definitely been great to have you on here. And I just want to like leave you with this and like ask and like have you answer this question for for the OFPs that are going to come across this episode, and they're
Hmm.
also going to be applying for the next class for NASCAR Diversity Internship Program next year. Like,
Hmm.
what piece of advice would you give to the OFPs who are looking to work in sports in the future, but not feel discouraged about the competitive application pool around the industry?
Um, be persistent, I think. Um, be persistent, but don't necessarily be a pest.
Hmm.
I think so many different people are busy, and and don't take things personally either. Those are like three big things. Like, be persistent, but don't be a pest, and don't take things personally. I think it's important to be persistent in like your applications. It's important to be persistent in continuing to better yourself, better your skill set, better your resume, better your relationships. I think that's really important, and be persistent in like continuing to apply to different jobs. Like, maybe you didn't get that one. That's okay. It's okay. Apply to another one, or that doesn't mean you can't even apply to that company again and apply for a different position, or you know apply for that role later on, and tweak your resume, do some things, be persistent. And the reason I say don't be a pest is because you can try and reach out and make these connections, but you also have to recognize that people in the sports industry are very busy, are very like I guess that's really it, very, very busy. And they can't always get back to you, and maybe they see your message and they're going to get back to it. Like, don't be so persistent that you're just like constantly annoying a person, or annoying a person trying to get a job or trying to get a connection. That there's a fine line between that. That's why I like kind of threw that in there. A very fine line between doing that. So I think it's like knowing when enough is enough, but like always be persistent, like bettering yourself. And like, just because you get a no, that does not mean that there's not a yes, even from that same company later down the line. Like, Absolutely. That does not mean that. And I think that's part of not taking things personally, which is hard, because I think we all work so hard at like being good at our crafts. We work so hard on our resumes. We work so hard in school and so hard, at various jobs to, be the best version we can be. So when somebody tells you no, you're like, well, dang, like, they're telling me no. And it's like, not necessarily, it's about like retraining like how you're thinking. And it's hard. Like, it's hard for me. Like, I definitely like take no's personally a lot, but it's like a learning experience, and learning like that doesn't mean that you're not gonna get what you want or get something even better. So I guess those are my 3 things. That's the advice I could give.
Yeah, definitely. And it's like the old saying goes, like, when one door closes, another one opens. And that's the mindset that I really encourage and like put onto the OFPs, that hey, like, you're like, this is an industry where you're gonna have to get used to rejection, but at least what comes with rejection, it comes that humility, it comes that persistence that you're talking about, and it also comes with not trying to take things personally as well, that you're talking about. And I think that's definitely a huge thing that people can take from understanding that, and understanding that that's the nature of the business, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's key. And I'm like, I need to take my own advice, like, because I don't always take it like truthfully. Like, I do not always take my own advice. Sometimes I do take things personally, or I will be like, dang, like, you really, really wanted something. And, I think it's just a learning curve. And I think it's human nature to feel that way. But it's about like training yourself to be like, no, that's okay. I'm going to apply for the next thing, or I'm going to go back and tweak my resume. And I think that was key in talking about, we were saying how having mentors are so, so, so important, because you might be able to go back to that person like, hey, like, do you see something like I can tweak? Like, do you see something that maybe, like, what do you see here? Because you may not be able to see it, for yourself. And they could be like, oh, change that word, or, oh, like, do this, or, oh, I know somebody that can help you, Like, I think getting second eyes is also really, really important in, getting into it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, all those times I was in the career services office, or going to see my career advisor, and like, I got to the point where they were getting tired of me. Like, it was like, oh, Phil, you're back again. I'm like, oh man, like, yeah. So I definitely get what you're coming from there. But Alex, it's been a pleasure having you on here. Like, thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you. I'm glad we finally got to do this. I'm happy I'm the last one. I feel honored.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I guess with that being said, that concludes the NASCAR Diversity Series here on the Off-Field Players Podcast. And I just want to say thank you to everybody that's been able to help put this series together. And also, hopefully the OFPs, you're able to take what has been told by all the interns that are part of the 2023 class for the NASCAR Diversity Internship Program, taking their words of advice, like using their experiences as motivation to motivate you to be one of the next OFPs in line. And just continue to strive, continue to prosper, continue to do everything you can to make yourself better. And Alex, thank you so much again for coming on, and I'll make sure to leave Alex's information down in the description for those that watch the YouTube video, so you can go connect with her on LinkedIn, go follow her, watch her TikToks, go wherever you can to keep up with Alex's journey. And just like I'm sure, like, Alex, you're not like you're open to answer any questions that
Yeah.
people may have, about,
Yeah.
how like get into the sports industry, how to get into an Ivy League school, like
Yeah.
do what they can.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you too. This is an amazing thing that you're doing, and I think it's super helpful. I wish I would have like known something about known about something like this a few years ago. I would have like been like into it and been like looking into all these questions that you've been asking. They're just super helpful. So like shout out to you and thank you for doing something like this. It's brave. It's bold. I think it's very needed. So I appreciate you too.
Oh, well, that means so much, Alex. Thank you for that, and yeah, you're
Yeah, you're
welcome.
welcome.
But yeah, that's gonna wrap it up for
All
this
right.
episode of the Off Field Players podcast and the conclusion of the NASCAR Diversity Series for it. So thank you so much for everybody that tuned in, watched to the end. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to also share this and like this if you're tuned into the audio version on Spotify and iHeartRadio. And and be on the lookout for future Off Field Players podcast episodes that are soon to come. I got a lot of new, fresh ideas that I'm drafting up right now, and that I'm very excited to talk about. So definitely make sure to tune in for that. And also make sure to follow the new Instagram page that I created for the Off Field Players podcast. I'm
Ooh,
putting
let me
up
go do that.
clips. Yeah, definitely go do that. So to be able to follow the Off Field Players podcast on Instagram, it's OFP_podcast. So definitely make sure to check out the clips and be up to date on the new episodes that are coming out soon. And just continue to support the podcast in any way you can and share it to someone that's inspiring to be a future OFP. But that's with that being said, I'm gonna wrap it up, and I just want to wish everybody a safe weekend. Stay healthy, stay safe, stay blessed, and stay motivated. And as always, make sure to achieve what you believe.